Hello, welcome to my cooking thing. Um, this is kind of paused here so you can see the ingredients that are going to go into my dish that I'm going to make today. I'd like to share with you some of my crock pot recipes. I'll be adding crock pot recipes to the farm channel. It's something I do a lot of. I really like cooking out of a crock pot. It allows me to be an apothecary, so to speak. I like mixing up things and breaking traditions. I grew up thinking a lot of different foods didn't fit together, and I found out that none of that is true. You just have to know how to mix them up. Anyway, today we're going to have a beef and potato stew. You have microgreens here. This is, I grew these microgreens myself. You don't have to. You can use coriander or cilantro. That's the green stuff right here. They're cilantro microgreens. Coriander and cilantro are pretty much the same thing. One of them is more of a seed, and it's what you would grind up in your powder. Anyway, rose petals, dandelions, carrots, a jalapeno. Dandelions came from our property. The jalapeno I grew. Of course, the rose petals we grew. Top sirloin, some pork sausage, potatoes, chicken stock, rotel, beets, and mushrooms. Like I said, you can always pause this and get this is kind of the beginning of my soup. Anytime you make a crock pot dish, you start off with a stock. If you use water, you can do it. The problem with water is it will pull nutrients from the meat. It'll pull the flavor from the meat. It'll pull the moisture and the salt, and it'll basically make your meat taste really bland. But when you use, it's the same principle when they put sugar in water. As you keep adding sugar, eventually the sugar starts settling in the bottom because the water molecules can't absorb any more sugar. Well, when you make a crock pot dish, you want all the molecules already be loaded with flavor, and stock comes with, the chicken juice and the onions and garlic and the salt, and everything else. So anyway, I think it really goes a long way to making your dishes better. And by the way, the rose petals and the cilantro greens, that is not the volume that I'm going to put in this stew. It's just I wanted to put them on the recipe list. Okay, making cooking videos is not my thing. This will be my first one, and I'm just going to talk to you. My wife and me, that we're the only two people. This is for two. This is a recipe for two. We're the only two people who eat this. I only cook for both of us. So there's going to be a lot more meals out here. Anyway, the point is she hates vegetables. She can't stand them. She doesn't like green. And there's only a handful of vegetables she likes. One of them is hominy, and I'm not adding hominy to today's. But what I found is, if you want to, because, I want her to be healthy. So when I make our dinners, if you grind everything into a liquid, basically, and I'm going to show you how I do that. I'm not just throwing rose petals and carrots into my stew. Carrots would be spit out pretty quick. But if you liquefy them into the broth, then you can pretty much put anything. I've had as many as 42 different vegetables in one stew before. Actually, I think it was a chicken soup. But I love mixing in a crock pot. Like I said, it's kind of like being an apothecary. And I think that a healthy diet is a varied diet. So I like to put as much variation as possible into our food. So when I come back, I'm going to show you some of the base that we're about to put in. I forgot to introduce you to the cooking crew today, and pretty much every day. There's Baby Dog. She joins in every so often. She's not the main crew. The main crew here is Mutt and Jeff. This one's Jeff, which also known as Gigi, and this one's Mutt. And we know her as Cassie. We call her Mutt because she's not a typical Papillon. I mean, look how big she is. She's a throwback. So I tease her a lot about being a Mutt. Oh, Trixie doesn't normally come in my kitchen, but she wanted to make an appearance. So anyway, this is how we start making our base. This is the rose petals and the dandelions, and you want to grind them up in a liquid. It makes it a lot easier. Okay, so you want to use the same broth that you're going to put inside the soup or the stew. I'm going to make a lot of soups and stews. I don't know that I could show you anything really with my baking skills, or I can't cook steak very well, but everybody seems to love my crock pot dishes. So I start with just these petals. These are dandelions and roses. By the way, the roses, they don't have a lot of smell. Look up for yourself the benefits of eating flowers and which ones you can eat. The dandelions came from the yard. Everything's been washed. Anyway, but you want to mix it into the broth, and I'll tell you why. Because as you start adding ingredients, most of my soup is going to be liquid. The object is to just have meat, sausage, and potato, and mushrooms for this one. Those are the only things that you're going to feel the texture and you're going to taste. Everything else is going to be a liquid, if at all possible. So you want the pieces small. Oh, but anyway, I'm using broth to grind it in, because if you don't, before you know it, you'll have your pot overflowing, depending on how many ingredients you add. So you'll see. I can't help it if the dogs are being noisy. What I like about the roses is it turns into blood. So when I use red rose petals, it turns into blood red. But since I put the dandelions in there, it looks like it lightened the color up. It's not really going to add a lot of flavor. Like I said, there's a lot of benefits to rose hips and petals. Also, don't worry about if there's tiny, tiny little chunks, because remember, we're going to heat this pretty much 6 hours today. This is going to cook for about 6 hours. And whenever the heat is going to blend everything, it's going to continue blending it. And so even the smaller pieces are going to, as you stir it throughout the day, they're going to break apart, and you're not going to have any texture. You shouldn't be tasting or eating rose petals or the cilantro or the carrots, and definitely not the jalapeno. I got to sneak that in for spice. She doesn't like jalapenos. She just likes meat and potatoes, pretty much. Ready for the next phase. I was reminded by Cassie that since I'm using carrots, she's entitled to one. Let's see if she'll catch it. I've got a frozen carrot here for her. I don't give any to Jeff because she doesn't like carrots. So here we go. Oh! She'll be like, what did you just eat? But trust me, she hates them. Now you can look at the relaxing liquid that's in the crock pot while I clarify a few things. I don't mean to imply that I'm sneaking any of this food in on her. She knows what she's getting. It's just that And she doesn't mind eating it. It's just that she doesn't want to see it or feel it. The taste is great. In fact, I'm going to put beets in here, and I'm going to show you. I hate beets too. I always thought I couldn't eat beets. And then one day, I thought, you know what? Let's put them in a stew. They thicken up your stew, and apparently what I really hated was the texture. Because beets are really good. Cilantro, just use it to however much you want. Put however much you want. You're not going to mess it up because cilantro is really refreshing. It gives it a nice refreshing flavor. That's the best way to explain it. So here's the cilantro, carrots, and the jalapeno pepper. Now, remember, I told you just don't start adding water or stock to the pot until the end because you want to control your water level. Sometimes if you didn't plan it right or you have extra, I always add mushrooms to every chicken soup and every beef stew if I can. She doesn't mind those. I love them, and I think that they help with. I really don't. I'm not making any claims, and I put a disclaimer at the beginning of this, but they're supposed to help with cancer, breast cancer, and such. But no matter what, they're still good. So I put anyway. But the point is to use this juice if you don't want to, or you don't have enough chicken stock left over. Don't forget that some of the things we're adding today has a lot of water built in. And you'll see in the future when I make other desserts. I mean, I don't have a way to edit this, so that's in. When I make other dishes, it'll be in there. Beans and other things. I'll use the water from the can. Sometimes I empty it, sometimes I don't. It just depends. But I try my best not to add water. Like I said, it's going to waterlog and drain and bland out your food. So you might say, hey, why didn't you fill that up? Why don't you get the most out of your grinder or blender, whatever you want to call it? Well, because it really helps when you cut it into small pieces. It kind of helps to plan it out. And you don't want to fill it all the way to the top because sometimes you'll get overflow. So I'm doing it in stages. The last thing I'm going to put in the blender are the beets. And I'm going to add the rotel straight to it because, again, the tomatoes will break down over time. She doesn't mind tomatoes. By the way, in case you didn't figure this out, all of my cooking is aimed at her. I stay home and work from home, and she goes to work, and I have to have dinner ready when she comes home. So everything's going to be about her preferences. So while I'm putting the beets in here, I wanted to mention that anything that I don't use, I don't waste. Stems, bits, skin. You're going to see how I cut the potatoes. It's probably going to drive you mad, but you'll see why. I compost it all, so nothing's ever thrown away or wasted. So, don't get freaked out if you think I'm wasting stuff, because nothing's wasted. Anyway, here's the beets. These are going to be beautiful. They're going to make a beautiful beet juice. They're really soft, so they're super easy to grind up. Carrots are actually the hardest. I find that if you don't cut them into super small pieces, carrots are super difficult to liquefy. I'm going to try to add tricks and tips wherever I can too, if I think about them. Here's the rotel. I open it with a can opener and always leave one little piece of metal so you can do stuff like this. You can turn it over and the metal stays on. So you can drain the water if you need to. Same thing with any canned good. If you leave a little piece of metal on, it allows you to control it better. And of course, here's the beet juice. Isn't that beautiful? I can't believe I didn't start doing this till a few years ago. I went my whole life thinking I couldn't stand beets. Nice and see how thick that is? It's going to thicken up your stew too. So, do you hear that? Now you're saying, hey, what do I do about all that? Well, we're not going to waste it. I have some more chicken stock. I'm not done adding the stock. By the way, you could have added beef stock. To me personally, I haven't noticed any difference as far as like taste. People complaining, you know, because I thought, well, you can't mix chicken with chicken. You can't mix beef. You know, you have to put beef stock with beef or something. It doesn't work like that. Chicken actually makes it salty and tastes really good. You can mix the two. And since I had more chicken stock I need to get to use. So anyway, so I'm pouring it in here, and I'm going to run this through the liquefier. And it's going to wash this container and get the rest of it. And then you might say, hey, look at that. You're really efficient. You like to use all your ingredients. Well, I really wish I could claim that, but I'm also very lazy. So this makes it so much easier to clean later. I can just rinse it out sometimes, and sometimes I can put it straight into the dishwasher. But it really does help clean it. So either way, rinsing it and running through that. And see how high the water level is already? And I haven't added the meat or the potatoes or the heavy stuff yet. Now, I'm not going to show you cutting them, but I'm going to show you them maybe to scale. These are very small potatoes. And so what do you do with these? Well, I'm not going to peel every single one, and she's not going to eat the skin. And I'm not going to wash them because that's annoying. So I'll show you what I do. So this is what I did. I basically just take a knife, cut them into cubes, and cut off all these bits here. And then I'm going to cube them up to put in the stew. A long time ago, when I first got married, I started cooking a lot. Well, I've always been cooking for her, but potatoes would go bad. Okay, they would go bad. It's hard to, you have to specifically try to make potato dishes, and sometimes you forget or you run out of time. And I thought, hey, these are rotten all the time, and one of the reasons is I don't have time to mess with them. Well, this took me seconds to just cut off all those big bits, and so you can look at it like either throw them in the trash, or compost them. You know what I mean? Get rid of them, or cut them. So I figure this is the best way, especially for small potatoes. So anyway, like I said, you can either look at it like that. And again, I'm putting all those in my compost where I'm growing my bell peppers. I don't have any more bell peppers left over. I definitely will be adding them. They always add vitamin C. And some capsicum, but I'm already getting the capsicum from the jalapeno. But anyway, so like I said, you can look at it a couple of ways. You can look at it like, you know, if I didn't have time for them, throw them in the trash, or just cut half of them off to make this take seconds. So, you know, you have to use. See. So Cassie, she will eat anything. It's time for a Cassie again. Come on, Cassie, show them who you are. Yeah, she's always down there, and she's also the only one who will eat a potato if a piece of potato flies off the side. Not always. Dogs don't like potatoes or bananas a lot of times. Those are, for some reason, those are two big ones. So I was going to tell you something else while I'm cutting these up. Trying to be respectful of your time. I'll have to come back when I remember it. I was going to go over the disclaimer. Not a famous chef, and you should use all your safety precautions. And And if you don't know how to cook, don't cook without supervision. But I'm doing this also because a lot of times I find that I'm telling people about my recipes, and just telling people isn't the same as showing them. So whether anyone watches this or not, the people that know me, my friends and such, they'll be able to see what I'm talking about, and and how I do it. So that's another thing. So I'm doing this for whoever's interested, obviously. I know most of this channel is going to be devoted to our pups. We like to share all of that with everyone because, well, it's not even fair to keep all the love to ourselves, is it? So, if you want to see cutting or something like that in the future, put a comment in the bottom and say, hey, I wanted to see your knife work or whatever. I don't know what people are really interested in. Like I said, I'm really doing this. Actually, and so there's one more. I hate cooking things the same. Obviously, everything's cooked somewhat the same. There's the general rules, but I really don't like to go by recipes unless it's absolutely, necessary. So sometimes I make an extra good dish, and I forget how I made it. And sometimes I leave the cans and all the ingredients out on the table until I'm done, until it's completely done, it's been tasted. And if, she says, oh, that's really great, then I go write down the ingredients. It's one way to do it. And if she says, oh, that was okay, then I go throw everything away and don't write anything down. Because again, remember I said I'm lazy. So everything I do is going to be the easy way if I can help it. But you see how my water level's rising? And if you run up to the crock pot too far up here, then when it starts bubbling, it's going to bubble. Then you're going to start, even though I have this lid, you're going to have a real difficult time stirring it. You're going to get it all over the sides of the crock. It's going to happen. I mean, it's cooking, right? Cooking's messy, but it's going to get all over the sides of the crock pot. So you want to try to keep it. I like to keep it about 1/4 inch below this line if I can help it. Sometimes, you can't, but that's the main reason we're worried about the water level. As you can see, just as a vegetable soup already, this thing is going to make, I don't know, 14, 20 servings. It's going to make a lot of servings already. And I usually end up freezing it, and then we eat it again later. But let's be real. What's going to happen is I'm going to put it in the freezer. I'm not going to label it. And then I'm going to have all these wonderful meals in frozen containers, and I won't know what's in them. Because, doing all that takes too much time, right? And work. Anyway, so now time for the sausage. I like cutting up sausage. It's super easy. You just line them all up together. And try not to show you any brands or anything because it doesn't matter. It's really preference. I would suggest not using anything super spicy and hot for your audience. If they don't like really spicy, just putting that jalapeno and this rotel in there is going to, it's going to make it pretty spicy. So if you still want it to be edible. Also, another thing I don't do, when I married into this whole family, they eat salt like it's going out of style. They put salt on everything. And so I don't add any salt because she's going to add salt no matter what. It's just the way they are. And I don't want to have too much salt. You're going to get salt. Every single thing you buy and you put in your food pretty much has sodium in it. You're going to get plenty of sodium. If you salt it, you're really just salting it to taste. And I haven't gone over the spices that are going in this yet, but I'll do that obviously when we get to that part. But yeah, so don't add any salt unless you just really absolutely have to. Also, I'm going to tell you a couple other secrets. I don't know if you know this, but salt is cheating. Fat is cheating. I learned to cook in the fire service, and my lieutenant told me that when I was younger, she said, hey, fat is where the flavor is. And as I learned to cook, she's right. If you take a dish and you take all of the fat out, no fat, no butter, then you get a very, very bland dish. So then guess what? Well, I got to use spices to make it taste good, right? What do people do? They go to salt. So you'll find that things without fat have a ton of sodium because people want one or the other. So I don't add any sodium, and I really try to make everything as lean and as fat-free as possible because these are two ingredients you're getting no matter what in your food. And in a beef stew, I do not cut the fat off my meat because it is going to dissolve and render down into the broth, and it is going to taste great. It really is. But if I was making steak or something for anyone, most of the time people can't stand the fat and they cut it off. It annoys me, but not in a stew because, like I said, it renders down and gets so soft. It's like more like a butter at that point. I've got to pause so I can clean up a bit. You see this? When I cut the meat, you can easily discard this piece of fat here, but I don't because it's going to taste really good. Fat is where the flavor is. And depending on what I'm cooking, sometimes I might have too much fat. I can cook it, cut it, put it in the microwave. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to mention. So when I cleaned up just now, one of the things, a habit I do, especially if you have dogs, we have a lot of dogs. We have 6 dogs and a cat, as you know, is I do not leave anything with food on plastic because they will get into it and they'll suffocate. They're not smart enough to protect themselves. They will go face in. They will get it stuck in their throat. So anytime there's plastic laying around with food on it, I immediately put it in the trash. I heard a terrible story one time where somebody's dog got into a chip bag. They left a bag of chips somewhere, and the dog shoved his face in the bag. And well, like I said, this is a terrible story. I won't finish it, but I think you know what happened. So anyway, I'm not going to try to over-explain everything because I feel like if you can cook, you probably know, and you need to learn on your own anyway. But this is kind of the size. It can be any size you want. Just remember, it's going to shrink as it cooks over time. You know, you don't want it too big, but you can get too small, I think, too. You want them to taste the meat. Now, remember, I told you that you're going to... Hey, keep it down. I made the mistake of giving them a few pieces of beef, and now... Anyway, you don't want to get the pieces too small. You don't want them to dissolve or end up in... Because... Gigi, shh. Because... You made me lose my train of thought. If it gets too small. Oh, because then it's a vegetable soup, not a beef and potato soup. The object of this was to be beef and potato. The vegetables are supposed to be the side gig. Yes, I know you like that. You like that idea? So you want to make sure that your pieces are big and chunky so the person gets a mouthful of meat. That's what this is about, meat and some potatoes. But let's face it, no one's going to eat all the potatoes. The meat is the main attraction. Here you go. Oh. Let's see. I'll let everybody see you guys get your share. Okay, we're not socialists around here, and these guys, they earn their keep by helping me in the kitchen. Here you go, Cassie. Oops. And here you go, baby dog. Oop. That was a bad throw. I'm not used to throwing with a camera in my hand. And look, the varmints are all lined up. They're here. Well, you guys came late. These guys put in the work. They get a treat. You guys, you just kind of sat back there. My kitchen crew helps me. Have you ever had a really big mess in the kitchen? Well, that's when your dog becomes a star. Oh, I don't know how come this video is so long, but I'm going to put in some fajita seasoning and some seasoned salt. Yes, I'm adding salt, but it's also got a lot of other seasons with it. If I want this to have a more earthy flavor, then I'll add Italian seasoning, which is a huge mix. And don't worry about like mixing it, because it's going to get mixed when you stir it up. And this is my favorite. I pretty much like to add the smoked paprika, because it's really hard to get that smoky flavor otherwise. So this is a great way to get that smoky flavor. So nice red stew, probably similar to the stew that Esau made. If any of you know your Bible, he made a red stew that he really wanted, his brother really wanted. And so here we are. And yeah, I'm really sorry about the length of this video. I see other people do it in 15 minutes, and I don't know how they do it. And I didn't even have to open this other stock. So anyway, I appreciate you guys watching me, and I put it on low. It's going to cook low for 6 hours, and then it's just going to sit and it's going to bubble until we're ready to eat it tonight for dinner. So I'll see you next time.